Hi everyone, it's Tamara here with another card making tutorial. This time I'm using one of the new Christmas stamp sets from Wondering Wabbit called Step Right Up to Christmas. It's an awesome mashup of Christmas characters meet the circus, and I have actually created this scene card today using the Santa Claus ringmaster and also the actual tent that comes with the set plus one of the sentiments. So let's get started. I've printed my scene out onto some Copic XPress at Cardstock, and I'm actually going to do the background first and then work on the characters last, just to make sure that I don't drag any colours where I'm not wanting, because I am using a bit of red on Santa Claus. So we'll start off with the sky. I'm just going to show you one side. So I'm initially putting down my lightest colour, BG10, to create a nice kind of wet look on my paper, and then I can add all my other colours on top. So I'm just kind of working on the side of my pen so I get a nice smooth transition between each colours and a nice smooth layer. So I'm just going over that initial colour, which is my B37. So I wanted to create a little bit more because I didn't quite get enough, and then I'm just going to do some tip to tip between the 37 and the BG57 just to make sure I get a nice smooth transition between those two colors. And I will do the other side of the sky off camera because I do it exactly the same way as this. Now I will have all the numbers showing of what pen tops I'm using on the left hand side, but I will have them all listed in the description box below for you as well. So now I'm just going in with my BG11, and then we'll go in with that initial color we put down, the BG10, to smooth out our finish. And now I did the other side off camera. Now I'm just going to start colouring in the inside of the tent. Now I'm having it quite dark in there, so I'm using my end markers, but you could have like the lights on inside, but I just wanted it to look quite dark so that my actual tent and Santa really stood out and didn't get lost in the glow that might come out from that tent opening. So I'm just going out with my end marker. So I'm going to have part of the ground going inside through the door. So I'm just kind of going to slowly transition this, and I'll bring in my N5, and that will be my transition color between the inside and the floor that we're going to be putting in. So the ground that's coming from outside to inside. So now I'm going to start on my ground. So I'm just working on my darkest color first, which will be my E47, and I'm just going to set all my shadows. So obviously Santa's going to be throwing a bit of shadow out the front, so I'm coloring all of that in, just trying to get a smooth kind of or sharp end to my coloring around those boots so that it can help with that blending out once we get the next color coming in, which is going to be E44. And we're going to slowly blend that out, and I will blend that back into that that tent. So I'm slowly going over that N5 marker to get a nice smooth transition between where the inside and the ground meet. I'm just working in little flicking motions as I'm getting that color blended out from that E47 with this E44. The next color I'm going to bring in is E43, and again just slowly working it up into that N5 marker so that we've got a nice smooth transition now between where that floor and wall meet inside that tent. So I'm slowly just working out my shadows. Then I'm going to bring in my E42 to do that final blend out of this particular blend. And then we're going to bring in kind of like some sandy browns to kind of mix that up before we put our grass sections into our scene. So I'm just going over all of those colors to make sure we get a nice smooth blend between. Just coming down to the bottom. And then I'm going to bring my E31 in. So this will be my lightest brown marker in this blend. So I'm just slowly working that out and coming into where our grass is now going to go. So my darkest color for this, so I'm going to just kind of base my scene down the bottom. So put in quite a bit of darkness down the bottom corners and along the base. Blend that out with my YG63. Slowly kind of working it in so that we can still read that sentiment. So now I'm bringing my G82 in to slowly work that up into that dirt. And now the YG91, it's got a bit of brown in that as well, so it works really well as a transition colour into those browns, and it works well with the greens as well. So I just wanted to reinforce, because we did lose a little bit of that contrast down the bottom, so I'm just bringing all those colours back in again to make sure we've got a nice smooth blend out, and to make sure that you can see those beautiful greens coming down the bottom. So just slowly work up into that dirt and finish off with our YG91, and our ground is all done. Now I'm going to work on the white stripes first for our little circus tent. So I'm kind of going to have red and white stripes. So obviously, as you've always seen me do, I like to still put some shadow in, but leave a lot of the white cardstock there. So I've just got my C3 marker as the main shadow, blended that out with my C1 and then with my C00. So you can see that still gives it a bit of shadow, so it doesn't look like you've forgotten to colour it, but still has that kind of white look for our white stripes. Now I'm just going through my red markers. My darkest will be R59. I blended that out with the R39. Now the R37, just slowly working down to our highlight. So next is the R35. Blend that out now with the R32. So that's going to be our lightest colour in this combo. So I'm just kind of doing little flicking motions to try and get that nice smooth blend between all of our colours. Now I'm going to work on our bottom section. I will do the right hand side off camera because obviously it's going to be exactly the same. So I'm just working out where that shadow will be. So obviously the top of the tent will be throwing a shadow, as well as where that curtain is folded back. So I'm just going to blend that out now with our C1, then our C00, and blend that out. Now I've got that these little what do you call them, banners will be throwing a little bit of shadow, so I'm going to bring those same markers back in and throw a little bit of shadow from that banner, just flicking down. And now we'll do the same with our reds. So again, we're going the same reds as we use at the top, so a little bit of the R59. And obviously where I remembered now our little banners there, where these little folds are, they're going to be throwing, and where our little wreath is, we'll be throwing a bit of shadow as well. So we'll blend that out with our R39, just doing little flicking motions so that we've got a nice kind of area for our blending to blend out for a nice smooth blend. Now we'll bring in our R37 and go underneath that little flag. Now I did get a little bit of red onto my white stripe, but I will come back in off camera and just get my colourless blender to get rid of that. So bring in our R35 so I can finish this little kind of stripe over to the left, but these ones I'll bring in that lightest colour again, the R32. Where that will be highlighting. So just down as that kind of tent pushes out down the bottom there, and where this little flap opens up. So make sure we've got a nice smooth transition, and I did the other, as I mentioned, off camera. Now I'm just going to, because obviously Christmas time in a lot of areas, they're unlike mine, which is very hot because it's summer here for Christmas. But obviously for most of the northern hemisphere, you're in winter, so you've got a bit of snow sitting on your circus tents for Christmas time. So I'm just going through my colours, just blending them out softly. And obviously where all that snow kind of comes down, where all those little spots fold in. And our final colour in this blend will be the BG70, just to blend out our snow blend. So obviously still keeping a little bit of white to make it look like snow, but we want to make sure we put a bit of shadowing in there. Now we'll start colouring up our little awning that comes down and also our little banners. So I'm going to do a blue for some of this, well, for all of this awning, but for our banner I'm going to do a red and blue stripe this time to kind of contrast against our red and white stripe. So I'm just going the opposite, and now we'll put our next colour in. So our B99 was our shadow colour. Blend that out with our B97 now. Just slowly working down into that white cardstock. And the same with these banners, slowly working that down. So I'm doing a 4 combo. So the next colour is B95. And then we're going to finish off with B93 once we finish. That will be our lightest highlight colour. So slowly working down to the end of our banner. And we'll bring that B93 now. Smoothing that out so we've got a nice smooth blend. And over onto the right, and just finish these little banners. And now we'll do our little red banners as well. So I'm only going to do a few colours on the red, so R39, so I forgo the R59 this time, and just using those R30s. So R35 next, and that final R32 to finish off our little red banner. So I did forget to do this little band holding back the curtain, so I'm just going to use the same blues that I used for the other sections of blue. And now we're going to colour our wreath up. So our darkest marker will be our BG99, so obviously our bow will be throwing a little bit of shadow, but it's kind of low enough down that I'm going to have the shadow down the bottom and the light will be hitting it kind of on the top. And the next colour is YG05, and then our lightest colour will be our YG03. So just doing little dotting motions to make sure that that looks very piecey like a wreath would. So now I'm just going back in, just adding a few extra contrast colours with our two darkest markers, the BG99 and the YG07. Now for our combo, I'm doing the R59 as my darkest colour, but I'm not going to worry about the R39 because these are quite small, and I'm only going to use the R35 on the baubles, but I will leave a little bit of white cardstock showing at the top so that there looks like there's a nice shine on those baubles. Now we're going to colour up our main character, so I'm just going in with my darkest colour, my E04, to organise some shadows on our Circus Santa. So we see under his nose, and I'm going to have the light coming from the top left hand corner, so all my shadows are kind of going to be on that right hand side of Santa, including his outfit. So I'm just now blending that out with the E11. See, his fingers will be throwing some shadows as they clamp over that candy cane, and blend that out with the E01. Our E00 is our next colour, and then our E000 is our highlight colour, so the top of his nose and top of those cheeks, top of his ears and his hands. And now we're going to put a little bit of pink on his cheeks, because obviously Santa's got some nice rosy cheeks happening there, and just soften that with the lightest colour, the E000. Now we'll just colour up his hair, so eyebrows, beard and mustache and hair. So it's great having these lines that have been drawn by the artist, because you can just follow along with them to get that look of, you know, hair pieces. So now I'm going to blend that out with the C1, so just working those little flicking motions, following along with that, you know, the actual shape of his beard. And our next colour will be our C00, slowly working into that highlight as that beard kind of protrudes out. That will be in our highlight portion of his beard. So just flicking up into that area. Now we're going to also use the same colours. So while I've got our C markers out, I'm going to add some texture to all the fluffy portions of Santa's outfit. So this kind of band of his hat, the little pom-pom at the back, and obviously he's got some nice cuffs on his arms and his legs, or the top of his boots, that are going to be in white as well. So obviously where anything is throwing shadow, I'm going to kind of make that area darker with that C3. So we see the bottom section of his boots, and also kind of where, you know, his jacket comes over here, or the inner portion of his leg, that will be in shadow. So we're just going to do those little stippling of the colors. So now working with the C1, slowly blending up and just adding a few extra little spots to create some contrast, but not too many in where we're going to have our highlight. So our highlight color will be our C00, but we're leaving plenty of that white cardstock to show that these are white fluffy sections of his outfit. So just try and work in little dots to get that texture that we're after. And that's all that little kind of soft pom-pom area used. And I'm just going to bring the same colours that I used for his face just to colour up that mouth and tongue. Now again, while we've got our C markers out, I'm just going to do the white portions of our candy cane. So we see, as I said, the light's coming from our left-hand side. So obviously the shadow will be in the right, but also where that kind of folds under. So I kind of go up to one portion with that, the grey markers, and then around to that base side on the other side. Now we'll leave that dry before we put our red stripes in, and that way it's much easier than just doing a red and white stripe. So let's start on his hat. So I'm bringing those same red markers that we used for our circus tent to colour up his little hat. So blending that out with our R37. So our top highlight will be at the very top of his hat, which will be our R32. So just making sure we've got a nice smooth blend before we start on his little jacket, or like a little waistcoat underneath his jacket. So obviously where that folds over will have a little bit of shadow, and where that jacket's sitting over the top will have a little bit of shadow as well. So now we'll blend that out with our R37. So all our highlights will be on that left-hand side. And obviously his belt will throw a little bit of shadow also. Our R35 to blend that out. So this will be more in shadow on the right-hand side. So I fully colored that in, and then we'll finish off with that R32 to finish off that kind of top or vest underneath. We'll start on his pants. Obviously the jacket will throw a little bit of shadow, as will the jacket on the right, as well as between his legs, that's kind of in shadow at the back there. Blend that out with our R37. Our R35 next, so that back leg will be in quite dark, so I'm going to fully colour that in now, and our highlight colour will be on this portion of the leg, being the R32. And now we're going to start colouring up his jacket, the bottom of his arm, and obviously where these little collars are will throw a little bit of shadow. Where these folds in his jacket will also throw some shadow. So I'm just putting a small line in here. And obviously the backing of his jacket will be in quite dark shadow. Now I wanted to add this so that it really kind of stands out against because we're using the same colors with those pants. I just put a little bit of end marker in to just really make sure that that looks in shadow. Then we're bringing our E39 in to blend out our E59. So just blending out where those colors are throwing that shadow. The back of his arm, because he's got that quite far back, will be in shadow as well. Blending out our little folds in his jacket. Let's colour all that in now with the R37, because that base of that jacket will be in quite deep shadow. And now we're just going to add a little bit of shadowing to that collar as well, so that, you know, that does look like we've got a nice blend to it as well, but we want that a little bit lighter than the actual jacket itself. So I didn't put the two 9 markers at 59 and the 39 on those. Our next colour will be our R35, and then we've got our highlight colour that will be on anything that's kind of exposed, so where these little folds are out, and his collar will be in light, so the R32 we're going to use for that. And to blend out that R35 and just finish off these folds on his jacket so that we've got that nice smooth blend between all our colours. Now I'm going to use those same red markers to do our little stripes. So I'm just working out obviously where his hand will be. We'll be covering up a couple of those red stripes as well. So just wanting to make sure that we've got enough white and red stripes and that they're all kind of offset. So now obviously where this curves around, it will be under shadow on the underside, and these will be on the shadow on the backhand side. So just blend that out. So I'm only, because they're quite small, I'm only going to do that 3 combo on that. And the next thing we're going to do is colour that belt in. So I'm just using some warm greys for leather. So W8 will be our darkest. Blend that out with the W6 and then finish off with the W4. And then we'll also just colour up that little belt buckle, trying to kind of get that kind of goldy look that I think Santa would have a little bit of gold in his outfit. Now I'm also going to add some buttons colouring. So the darkest colour I'm going to use is the Y10 as the base, but I'm not going to use the Y or the W8 on that because I'm wanting a nice contrast. And again, I'm going to leave a bit of white at the top of those buttons so they look nice and shiny. So I'm just going to finish that off with the W6, just leaving that white as I mentioned. Then blend out the W8 on the boots, and our lightest colour for this boot will be the W4. That's our highlight colour of our boots. And then we'll just colour in the bases so that they are coloured up. So I'm just going with some browns that I've got that I had out on my desk. And that's all the colouring done. I've cut and scored a white card base because I thought that will make our image panel really pop with the blues and the reds, and also matching with that white that we've got throughout our scene as well. Making sure I'm putting that on the right side, popped a bit of glue on, just line that up, and we'll put that under a heavy book until that's dry. So now that it's dry, I've actually got out this Lawn Fawn sparkle glaze because I'm wanting to add a little bit of sparkle and dimension to this snow that's sitting on top of, or the icicles that are sitting on top of our circus tent. So where it's the darkest, I'm just adding that sparkle glaze there, and we'll set that aside to dry. Now that sparkle glaze has dried, this is the finished card for this tutorial. This set is so gorgeous, and you can make so many different themes using the different backgrounds and also sentiments that come with the set, and there's some gorgeous characters in there as well. I hope you've enjoyed this card making tutorial. If you have, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see any future videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.